March 2007. And these are the books I read. The first book in March of 2007 is DC Universe Trial of Time by Jeff Marriott. And in this book, Clark Kent is not Superman. He's never been Superman. Apparently, turns out some evil sorcerers are messing with the timeline, trying to get rid of superheroes. And there's going to be some time travel. I think the most impressive part of this is the list of characters that's in here. For me, if you're a superhero fan, a DC Comics fan, these are the characters that are in this book. Batlash, Old Western character. Dark Lord Murdrew. Arthurian-ish. The Demon / Jason Blood. That's him right there. Big fan of that character. Dr. Occult. Always fun to have a mystical character. El Diablo. Another Old West character. Felix Faust. Another magical bad guy. Johnny Thunder. Another Old West character. The main reason for me picking up this book, well, other than the fact that it was a DC Universe book, and the fourth one in a series, Jonah Hex, baby. And he is all scar-faced down there. Huge fan of Jonah Hex. Never seen the movie. I hear it's terrible. Lois Lane, The Phantom Stranger, Scalp Hunter, another Old West character, Superman / Clark Kent, and Vandal Savage, who was a caveman who became immortal. Anyway, The Trial of Time, DC Universe. It's got the Demon and Jonah Hex right there on the cover. That is good stuff, people. Jeff Marriott's a pretty good author. Let's set that aside. Next up, we have Resurrection Dreams by Richard Lehman. This is a relatively recently purchased copy from Onyx Horror. So I think it might be, I don't know where this was actually published. New York, apparently. I don't know. Anyway, this woman, Dr. Vicky Chandler, returns to her hometown. There's zombies, and there's a creepy dude who's trying to use those zombies to get to Vicky. I recall not being a huge fan of this book. This is the point where Richard Lehman was really hit or miss for me. And we're maybe at 50% here, where I really enjoyed half the books that I read by him. Wasn't thrilled with the other half. But I may have to reread this and see if I've changed my mind. Resurrection Dreams, Richard Lehman. Next up, we have Dispatch by Bentley Little. And I swear I bought a copy of this book, but I cannot find it anywhere. I have rearranged stuff. Rearranged books. So it might be someplace where I can't get at it very easily, but I thought all my Bentley Littles were basically in two places, and it's in neither of those places. It's also possible I have not picked it up again because the copy I saw at Half Price Books was in really bad shape. But anyway, in Dispatch, our main character is a guy named Jason, and he writes letters. He likes writing letters to complain about things, and he discovers that he can get things when he writes these letters. Free meals, free passes to an amusement park. Basically, anytime he writes a letter about something, he ends up gaining something. And he gets hired by this company to write letters for them. But of course, there's a dark side. This was my first Bentley Little. I can't remember if I'd heard people talking about Bentley Little and decided to give him a try, or if I just stumbled across this book, picked it up, but I was not impressed. I really think I have a copy somewhere. And I'd like to reread it now that I'm more of a Bentley Little fan, see uh, how I feel about it. But at the time I read it, I thought the concept was really interesting, but I thought it ended up falling flat and did not read another Bentley Little until The Bank, just a few years ago, not that long ago, and became a fan. Now I've got tons of his stuff, a fraction of what he's got out there, but a pretty good fraction. But Dispatch, Bentley Little. Then we have Hallows Eve by Al Sarantonio. And this is let me make sure I'm looking at the right stuff. Okay, Hallows Eve. This is one of the Orangefield books or stories. Orangefield is a town where San Antonio said a bunch of stuff, and our main character is Corey Fader, who has moved back to his hometown of Orangefield, and there's a dark land that's ruled by Samhain, and that's bleeding into Orangefield, I believe. So these horrific sort of autumn / Halloween themed creatures are getting in, and so there's some multi-dimensional stuff going on, and that's about it. My kind of thing. I like, of course, Halloween themed stuff, autumn themed stuff. Hallows Eve by Al Sarantonio. Next up, we have Nightmare House by Douglas Clegg. Now, in the last Reading Remembrances video, I talked about The Attraction by Douglas Clegg, and I believe I mentioned that book had a short story that was sort of an introduction to the Harrow series, Harrow. Well, this is the first book in the Harrow series, and it takes place in the 1920s. I believe it's like Harrow House, and the grandson of the guy that made Harrow House has returned to the house. Try to avoid saying Harrow House so many times. And there's all sorts of spooky shenanigans going on. His grandfather was into the occult and stuff, so horrific things are happening back in the 1920s. And that's Nightmare House by Douglas Clegg. Next up, we have The Watchman by Robert Crace. And this is not an Elvis Cole novel, but a Joe Pike novel. If there's anybody who's not at all familiar with Robert Crace, aside from standalone novels, his biggest thing is he has a series about private detective Robert Crace out in Los Angeles. And just as Spencer has Hawk, although Hawk is, I hate to say a sidekick, but he doesn't work for Spencer, but he helps him out a lot. Elvis Cole has Joe Pike, but Joe Pike is, I believe, a partner in the private investigation firm, but he's still very Hawk-like, very stoic, much more prone to violence than Elvis Cole. And so in this book, there is a young woman named Larkin Connor Berkeley, who's the poster child for the sort of poor little rich girl. Just does whatever the hell she wants out there in Los Angeles, thinks that she'll never get into any trouble, nothing bad can ever happen to her. She'll go, when she's driving, she'll go flying through red lights because nothing bad can happen to her. Her life is charmed. She witnesses an accident, I believe, and ends up becoming the only witness to a federal investigation. People start coming after her. Doesn't seem like any officials can protect her, and so her family hires Joe Pike to keep her safe. And of course, It's not just about keeping her safe, it's about figuring out what the hell's going on, why these people are after her. Things aren't exactly what they seem, and she, Larkin Connor Berkeley, might be the biggest danger to herself. I loved this book. Big fan of the Elvis Cole stuff, but it was great seeing Pike take center stage in the story, and we learn much more about him. He develops much more as a character, I believe, and I liked his relationship with the young woman that he's protecting. The Watchman by Robert Crace. The penultimate book for March of 2007 is They Hunger by Scott Nicholson. And this takes place in the Appalachian Mountains. Think um, Deliverance with vampires. These guys go whitewater rafting in the Appalachian Mountains and awaken these creatures that have been hidden in these caves for centuries. Creatures, the description says creatures of the night that thirst for blood. And the picture on the cover is just a big old mouthful of fangs. Like traditional vampire fangs. Looks like all normal teeth, except for two pointy ones going down, two pointy ones going up. You know what I'm talking about. I really enjoyed this. I don't recall if this was my introduction to Scott Nicholson. If anyone cares to remind me, have I mentioned Scott Nicholson before in a previous video? I can't keep it all straight. But you're definitely going to see more Scott Nicholson popping up in future videos. They Hunger, Scott Nicholson. And the final book that I read in March of 2007, Shadow Dreams by Elizabeth Massey. This was a short story collection from Leisure Books. I think up to this point, didn't realize they published short story collections. It was just novels. This had originally been released in hardback, and this paperback edition removes the introduction. I forget who wrote that, and adds 3 stories. So it's a whole bunch of short stories. The majority of them focus on family and just all sorts of weird characters, tragic characters, and I believe from what I read when I was looking this up, only one that actually deals in the supernatural. But Elizabeth Massey, great writer, and I've met her. She's a wonderful person. So that's everything I read in March of 2007. And the question for this video, is there an author where you read, the first time you read one of their books, you were not a fan, and something made you go back and try again with the author, and then you became a big fan? For me, first example, Bentley Little. Already talked about that in this video. Don't think we need to go into any more detail. Another example that I've probably mentioned a number of times somewhere in these videos is, and this is a slightly different example, Dean Koontz. First book I read by Dean Koontz, Shattered. Did not like it at all. It was a long time until I read another one, which was Watchers, and I really enjoyed that. That's when it first came out. And so I started finding his other stuff, reading it, enjoying it. Eventually went back to Shattered to try it again. Maybe I was in the wrong mood, whatever. Nope, still didn't like it. But continued reading his stuff until I got to a point where it just really started to feel repetitive. And I've only read like one thing since the 90s, early 90s. Someone recommended one of his books. It's the first one with the character that can't go out in the sunlight. Don't remember the name of it. It's been on this list because that would have been back in 98, I believe. So I've already talked about it. But so really didn't like the first thing I read by Koontz. tried them again later. Really dug that stuff, and I still like Phantoms and Lightning and a bunch of the old stuff, but just got to a point where I was not a fan anymore, and then read one other thing which didn't thrill me, so haven't bothered going back. But again, Bentley Little, at this point, still a pretty big fan with everything else I've read. I like his corporate horror. I don't know if there's an official name for it, and corporate isn't the best. Capitalist horror, maybe that's not quite right, but he's got The Bank and DMV, and I haven't read The Store yet, and then there's The University. All of these sort of institutions where things are not necessarily what they seem. The Consultant falls into this. Really, really digging that stuff. I know he's got different things, and I've got plenty of other stuff that doesn't fall into sort of that category that I need to read, and hopefully I enjoy that as much as I enjoy things like The Bank and DMV. But what about you? Is there an author you read, did not like, decided to give them another chance? Christopher Moore would be another one. First book I read by him, Practical Demon Keeping, did nothing for me. Eventually came back and read, I believe, Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, was the next thing I read. Loved it, so went back, started rereading, and enjoyed the stuff that I read. I haven't kept up with him, and I did reread Practical Demon Keeping, and I enjoyed it more the second time. But again, what about you? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links to my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.